Hi, I'm Pat Middleton. Join me every Saturday at 1:30 p.m. for Behind the Rhyme. That's every first, second, fourth, and fifth Saturday at 1:30 p.m. for Behind the Rhyme with Pat Middleton, right here at WTMR 800 AM, live streaming at WTMRradio.com. Well, good afternoon once again, and welcome to Behind the Rhyme. I am Pat Middleton, and it's time for us to go back behind the rhyme with another poet from the tri-state area, another wordsmith, another great maestro of the pen. Today I have with me none other than Mr. Norman Cain. Norman Cain. Good afternoon, Norman. How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, Pat. Thanks a lot for having me on your program.
You're very welcome. Thank you for making time to be with us today. Norm, I'm going to ask you to take a couple seconds, maybe before we dig into this interview.
Certainly. My name is Norman Cain. I'm a Philadelphian born in 1942, and I consider myself a first-generation second great migration individual. My parents migrated from South Carolina during the early 40s, and like many of the children of the migrants during that particular area, each summer I spent 2 months down in South Carolina. So I consider myself country. I'm a former teacher and social worker. I have 4 children and 7 grandchildren.
That makes you a rich man.
I think so.
I'm just going to read this short bio to fill in some of the gaps. Norman Cain, born and raised on Olive Street in West Philadelphia, graduated in 1964 from the Bluefield State College in West Virginia, where he majored in social science and minored in English. A retired 1964 from the Bluefield State College in West Virginia, where he majored in social science and minored in English. A retired social worker, teacher, father, grandfather. He is active in several writing groups, including The Best Day of My Life So Far. I think more than one of the writing groups at Drexel University. The Drexel's Writers Room, and I believe Tripod, is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. And some that I probably haven't mentioned, but certainly I met Norman at the Center and Discussion groups I started attending in 2020. Norman, when did you start attending the Center in the Park?
I don't know the exact date, but I would say I've been a member of Poetry and Discussion for at least 11 years.
Wow. Awesome. And tell me, Norman, how long would you say, if you had to put a number on it, have you been writing poetry?
Poetry has always been in my mind. When I was in the kindergarten, my kindergarten teacher told the group of assembled parents who that I knew my nursery rhymes better than anyone else. I got that interest. I had that interest way back then. But in the 3rd grade, I wrote a poem, and it was placed in the main hallway at my elementary school, Martha Washington, at 43rd and Aspen in Philadelphia. So basically, that's when I started.
Wow. So you've been a poet since the 3rd grade, and such a good one that your work was displayed, making you a published poet, for all to see in the hallways of your elementary school. That is fantastic. What would you say is the most enjoyable part of poetry for you? Is it the writing? Is it the reciting? Is it when you first sign? Which part of the process is most exciting for you?
Uh, I think the process for me is the actual writing of the poem. Um, to give you an example of why I made this statement is because right now I have at least 3 or 4 poems that have been in my mind for the last 4 to 5 years. They have not made paper yet. So
Mm-hmm.
writing,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's probably the most important part for me.
Okay, okay. Is that the longest that a poem has sat with you, 4 to 5 years, or do you have any that you've written that sat with you longer than that?
Well, yeah. I've had a poem that sat with me for at least 25 years, and it dealt with Harriet Tubman. And
Oh.
uh, to be personified when and I and a group of us, there are 3 of us, 2 ladies and myself, we follow the Harriet Tubman Trail. So we were down in Eastern Shore, Maryland, around where Harriet Tubman was born and whatnot, for the unveiling of her statue, actually Cambridge, Maryland. And that gave me the opportunity from that particular point to put that poem on paper.
Wow. Wow, that's something else. So I love the poem sits with you when the poem sits with you. Let me ask you, who is your favorite poet and why?
I would say my favorite poet is the former Leroy Jones Marie Barra. He is a revolutionary poet, quite unique. Uh, also, he also is a great essayist and playwright. Essayist and playwright, and his message resonates through all of those elements.
Okay, okay. Do you have a favorite poem of his or book of his that is your favorite? Or book of his that is your favorite of his collections?
Well, believe I'm certain that I have a book of his. I have so many books in storage and whatnot. I'm certain that I do. But there's so many. Excuse me. There's so many books that he has written. In the city, I was at a gathering wherein there was a man, I can't think of his name, who was a contemporary of Maria Baraka, and he had on display at least 12 of his books. Many of those books are out of circulation now, but I'm going to try to get as many as I can.
Mm-hmm.
I've had the opportunity to meet Maria Baraka, I think at the Church of the Advocate years ago. And years ago, I did see his play downtown entitled The Dutchman. And he is, in fact, he's also a musicologist. So he's just so spread out in the arts.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. 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 Well, I think it's time for us to pause from our questions. We'll dig a little deeper a little later, but right now I want to give you space to share your first poem with us and also share the story behind the rhyme.
Okay, my first poem is entitled "They Beat Us Down to a Spark," and years ago, maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, at the writers' room at Drexel University, we had 2 months dedicated to Hurston. And this prompt that we had was entitled "They Beat Us Down to a Spark." That comes out of a line from her famous her famous novel. Her famous novel, and so it's entitled "Beat Us Down to a Spark." And while I have never, and I've searched for a poem by Zora Neale Hurston, but I can't find any. So I'm quite sure the great writer that she was, that she has done. Titled "They Beat Us Down to a Spark." So they enslaved us, beat us down to a spark, but the tenacious breath of the Afrocentric wind of perseverance coaxed the spark to become, and the spark became a vengeful volcano, unfurled an unconfined lava of resistance, whose irate, flowing, scorch earth policy resulted in resulted in an unestimated slave rebellions. Yes, they had beaten us down to a spark, but each little spark had a shine, and the sparkle from each shine transformed into light, not unlike a brilliant sunshine whose penetrated warlords beckoning us to vanquish inclinations of defeat, kept our eyes on the prize, strive towards eliminating the shackles of bondage, and vision peaceful slumber on the breast of freedom. So they beat us down to a spark. They beat us down to a spark. But each little spark had a song. We sang "Go Down Moses," the Negro national anthem. We shall overcome. And although they beat us down to a spark, we embraced our genius, became Dr. Hale Williams, who successfully completed the world's first open heart surgery, and Dr. Ernestine Just, who gave, who discovered blood plasma, Captain Johnson, whose manual double checking of computer data assured National astronaut John Glenn that it was okay to embark on the successful Earth orbiting friendship flight of 1962. Mark Dean and Gladys West, whose scientific endeavors into the world of artificial intelligence gave us the computer chip, Zoom, and GPS respectively. So they beat us down to a spark, but each little spark had a shine and a song, African American nation within a nation of deceitfulness to be all we could be in our quest to be eternally free.
Wow. Loved it, loved it, loved it. They beat us down to a spark, and I loved it. They beat us down to a spark, and I love your. You said one of those sparks became a vengeful volcano. And it sounds like it's a tribute. You took the prompt, which was for one writer, Zora Neale Hurston, from her book, and then you made this poem a tribute to many of our heroes and many of
That's
the
correct.
sparks that we have from being beaten down as a nation. But look at all the sparks that you mentioned. Each person was a spark. Brilliant,
That's correct.
brilliant.
Because we've always, even in ancient times, we've always had those talents. The thing is that our history has been so hidden that we don't know. Incidentally, the prompt came from her famous novel, "The Eyes Are Watching God."
Yes, yes. I was trying to look up the full quote before you started your poem, but I had to stop because I needed to concentrate. But I didn't find the name. That was where the quote came from.
Yes.
Okay, okay, awesome. I like that. That's kind of a twist on the golden shovel. It doesn't leave you so confined. You have the quote from the poet, but you're not confined to the line rules of a golden shovel. You're just given quote from the poet, but you're not confined to the line rules of a golden shovel. You're just given freedom to write that poem however you like. I like that much better. All right, so let me jump back into these interview questions and then we'll pause again for another. I could answer the question how your poetry has been a blessing to other people because I'm one of those people. But I want to know from you, how has your gift of poetry blessed you?
Poetry was therapeutic for me because during the times when there was playfulness in my life, I would sit down and I would just begin to write. And and on several occasions, the verses that I put down or the stanzas I put down, placed away, then maybe 6 months or a year later, I would look at those verses and stanzas, and then I would create from what I had written previously. So also, I'm learning that when for me anyway, when you stand in front of an audience when you stand in front of an audience and you recite, you more or less, well, I more or less uh, get can get the feeling whether my poem is being appreciated in the sense by those in the audience, and they'll let you know, and that and encourage me to go back to and decide what needed to be corrected. And reciting the question that it's best to notice who your audience is and have poems that they can relate to. And yeah, that's about it as far as that is concerned.
That was a very well-rounded answer.
And
That was a very well-rounded answer. Then you touched on something that I often talked with my sister about a lot, but never anybody else, and certainly never in public. But it was a one of the things we always talked about as poets, and that's know your audience, and you really be wise enough to know pretty much like what themes may work with what audiences, not necessarily what poem, but certainly know your audience. And that's something that she and I would talk about a lot. Being a part of the audience, not just from the poet's perspective, but from the audience perspective as well. Because sometimes you can feel lost. The poem is too deep; it may go over your head, or just it's not the right setting for the type of poem. So yeah, it took me a while to learn that. Not very long, not very long, but I definitely agree with that. Let me ask you, Norman, for our listeners who want advice on how to become a better, what advice would you give them?
I would say, in terms of poetry, read all the poets that you can, not only Afro American poets, but poets from all other ethnicities. And also, it wouldn't, if you read poets from the Caribbean or Africa, that would help very much. But I think that you should read as many poets as you can, and you can read the styles of those particular poets. The beat poets just wrote forever, Then you've had poets that will only have about 10 lines, and those 10 lines, the words, and within those 10 lines would say exactly what a poet was saying, and maybe a poet was saying in maybe 100 lines. So we have to look at
Mm-hmm.
the poets. You read the poet. You have to look at what the poets are doing, and you have to look at punctuation, and just really get into your craft. It took me a long time what white spaces were, and understanding. After I studied what white spaces were, spaces in between words,
Mm-hmm.
and it enabled me to realize that these are where the pauses are and where you can get your rhythm. And another thing that is very helpful, some poets are natural actors or actresses anyway, but you just look at them and listen to them and the way that they present themselves. And yeah, and there's much more. I had a to them and the way that they present themselves. And yeah, and there's much more. I had a poetry teacher once who said, "Study your craft because it will never end."
Very true. Very true. Poets are actors anyway. Um, Certainly, some of us, if we've been reciting for so long, we can, bury ourselves in the words and become the poem, almost like an actor with lines. They've become the character that they're playing. We can as well. Want to pause right here. I think it's time for a good break for another poem by Norman Cain. And don't forget to share with us the story behind the rhyme.
Okay, this poem is entitled "And a Doomday in Philadelphia." I'm not certain as to how many years it's been going on, but it's on South Street, and it's probably at least almost 40 years. Doomday come from the Yoruba faith of West Africa. Has just 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 moved in South America, Brazil, United States, and other continents. And in Philadelphia, each year around June the 8th, there's this large Doom Day continent. And in Philadelphia, each year around June the 8th, there's this large Doom Day festival, an African festival. The drumming, the marketplaces, and thousands upon thousands of people come to that affair. It's the largest such gathering in the United States of America. And also in Philadelphia, Juneteenth is the largest Juneteenth festival in America. So, hats off to Philadelphia for that. It's called a Doom Day. Philadelphia, a Doom. Before, let me back up a bit. We have, I believe, 14 haikus. This is how this poem is constructed. In a haiku, in a haiku, for those that are not familiar with the term, is 5 syllables on the first line, 7 on the second line, and 5 on the third line. Okay, Adunde. Philadelphia, Adunde is Yoruba New Year. Lois Fernandez found this event after a Nigerian trip. Always held in June on historic South Street. No rain check prevails. Sweat rains down the face of drummers, pounding cougars. Dancers twirl their souls. Orishas appear, riding the thumping drum beats of ancestors. Pungent smell of cuisine, African food remembered, chicken, fish, yams, beans. Taste of ginger beers. The slow inching crowd, bodies brush as they shuffle through humanity. The Hebrews join the Buddhists, Christians, Yoruba, Muslims in friendship. Reunions with long lost friends in African garb. Handshakes, hugs, catching up. Merriment on two stages enthralled the crowd with dance, music, poetry. Adunde revives the African marketplace. Revelers rejoice. And that was a
Thank you. That was awesome. When did you first start attending the Adunde festivals in Philadelphia?
that I probably I think during its second year, and
Okay.
then then the second year it was like Saturdays and Sundays. Second year it was like Saturdays and Sundays. Yeah, but that was the second year of it, and it's maintained throughout all these years. And you have vendors just coming from all over the United States and Africa, and that this and then and that this and then many Africans come. The dancing there. In one particular corner, you folk always go to that particular corner because the drummers will come in there maybe about 10 o'clock in the morning. They may not start to throw to the Schuylkill River and throw libations, fruits, and whatnot into the river to the Rubai gods, and then they come back. And I didn't do it last year, but I would always be there as the keeper of the drums when the drummers went to the Schuylkill River. Like I said, I have a friend, my good friend Frank and his wife. If I don't see them for a year, they know where to find me. So it's a great activity, social activity, full of history.
Wow. Thank you so much for giving us that little flash of history about Philadelphia and the Adunde Festival and also the Juneteenth Festival. It's certain time that we've had, Norman. Thank you so much for the rich history that you share within your poetry and for just sharing yourself with so many of us who we really sit at your feet and we're in awe of you and we appreciate you and we appreciate the gift in you and how you're just so open to share. So thank you for sharing with us today here at WTMR and to our listeners and to everyone who will hear this when they listen to the rebroadcasting on the YouTube channel as well. Casting on the YouTube channel as well.
Okay, and thank you very much for having me on your program. And I believe that at least I've known you of your presence for the last 4 years, and it's a pleasure to. And I've told you to your face, you are the ultimate. You wear many hats in the literary process, and thank you very much for your presence.
You're welcome, Norman. Thank you for your kindness. Stand by. I'm going to go off the air just a moment, but stand by. You've been listening to Behind the Rhyme with Pat Middleton today. Our special guest was Mr. Norman Cain, and he shared his poetry and he shared a wealth of knowledge as well. We're grateful to have had this time with him today. Join me next Saturday. Thank you for listening.